Hello and welcome to UC Today. My name's David Dungay. Today I'm joined by Simon Warren, Collaboration Architect at Resonate. Welcome, Simon. How are you?
Hello, David. I'm good. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. So today we're going to be talking about getting the most out of your Microsoft Teams room deployment. Obviously a massive subject at the moment. So many businesses are looking to deploy Microsoft Teams in their meeting room setup and obviously get the most out of that from a productivity point of view. But before we get into that conversation, Simon, do you want to give us a bit of an introduction to yourself and the business?
Hello, everyone. Yeah, so I'm Simon Warren. I'm the collaboration architect here at Resonate. Resonate are a Teams house. We concentrate on Teams voice and now on the MTR side of things. So I really help all of our customers realize the potential of their meeting rooms and collaboration spaces.
Fantastic. So let's get into that first question then. A lot of companies will be in that planning stage when it comes to their meeting rooms. What are the key considerations for people when planning these Microsoft Teams room deployments and to really achieve that enterprise sort of scale success?
Right. So that's a really good question. There are a lot of things that we need to take into account. You'll see a lot of marketing at the moment around small, medium, and large rooms, and that's a good starting place. But really, you need to understand that each one of these spaces has its own personality, for want of a better phrase. The acoustics in these spaces are different. The lighting in these spaces is different. And the type of work that people want to do in each of these spaces is different. So before you go headlong into deploying at scale, you really need to understand how to make these spaces work for your colleagues. And that really starts by talking to your colleagues. What do they want to achieve in each space? Do they just want to sit on a long table and meet and present? Or do you have people who need to actually do some collaboration together where perhaps they need to have some whiteboarding? Maybe you have a classroom type environment where you need not just a camera at the front of the room, but you need to capture the person who's actually stood there presenting and going through the content. So once you've understood the type of work that people are trying to complete in each space, you need to then go and actually survey the spaces that you're going to be deploying into. We've had various customers come to us where they're not getting the best out of a space, and when we've actually gone and had a look, perhaps it's a large room with concrete walls where the room is basically an echo chamber which is overcoming the capability of the microphones that are already installed there. Perhaps we have had collaboration bars, which can be a great tool. We've had them installed just a couple of feet from an air conditioning unit, and this is why people in the room then can't be heard. So it's really, really important to understand the dynamics of each space and design appropriately to get the most out of that. And you don't have to spend a huge amount on each of these spaces. There are commodity rooms where you can install a low cost device and have a great experience for your users. But then there are other rooms which require perhaps multiple cameras, multiple microphones, multiple speakers. And you need to understand that as you go into your project and as you start designing for these scale deployments.
Yeah. So, people talk about going with a single vendor, in these MTR landscapes. What are those advantages and disadvantages of going with a single vendor for MTR?
So, single vendor can be a great solution for people. It makes it very simple to manage. It makes it very simple to procure. It makes it relatively simple to deploy, and that can be a huge business driver. So I wouldn't I wouldn't put anyone down for choosing a single vendor. What I might argue though is that if you do go with a single vendor, what you get, what you the benefit that you get from the simplicity, you lose because it's no longer going to be the best in breed for all of your spaces. And there may be some spaces that the vendor that you've selected just isn't appropriate for. So you really do have to understand the limitations or the capabilities and the limitations of the vendor that you're choosing before you go to deploy.
Okay. We spoke before we were on camera a little bit about you know going with Windows versus going with an Android, and you kind of your advice to people is don't ever go with a single vendor. Is that something you advice you'd give to everyone, or does it really depend on the kind of deployment that's happening?
So that's advice that I would give to everyone. Personally, if these are my rooms, every one of the meetings that you have in a meeting room is high value. If it wasn't, they'd be doing it at their desk because everyone's got a webcam these days. Everyone's got a headset. The most important meetings that you have are being held in your meeting rooms. Now, as I said earlier, it doesn't have to be the most expensive kit in every single room. So where you have a commodity room, so something that a room, perhaps a small or a medium room that has a standard setup, then you can use Android and it will work for you wonderfully well. When you have a room that is a little bit more complex, where you need to have perhaps other third-party vendors included in the mix, perhaps you need to have ceiling mics, then I would always steer a customer towards a Windows MTR for those spaces. And of course, there are some Windows-based calibration bars, and I think we're going to see a few more of them hitting the market soon. And you will be able to deploy Windows in every single space successfully. So, yeah, it's a good question, and I think that most customers now, once they have been through a proof of concept, understand the value of Windows and Android in their own individual places.
Yeah. I want to focus a little bit on in-room sort of experience as well.
Mhm.
This is becoming a big sort of trend and a topic of conversation on UC today, and that is creating a common experience, across geographies. Is this still an issue for businesses, creating that sort of common in-room experience, and then how can they overcome this issue?
Yeah, 100%. This is absolutely still an issue for organisations around the world, and as I mentioned earlier in this interview, each room has its own personality. In some cases, that's good, that's acceptable. In other cases, you may find that you do have a room that has a large amount of reverberation or echo in the space where the microphone can't pick you up. You may find that you have spaces that aren't particularly well lit, whether that's because there's backlighting or because there aren't enough lights in the room. There are all sorts of things that can make a room deployment fail. And what you need to do right at the start of this is work out the tolerances that work best for you and your colleagues in your different spaces. And you also need to understand what the tolerance levels for the equipment that you're deploying in those spaces is. Because as I said, too much echo will overcome the microphone on most collaboration bars. It will, if you haven't got a DSP involved, overcome the capabilities of the various professional mics that you have inside your space. So you should really design the room to remove these issues before you implement your technology.
So, I mean, of course, another sort of top of mind issue for business leaders at the minute is productivity and efficiency. This is the way we're going to drive our economies or our economy forwards in the future. When it comes to MTR and Microsoft Teams rooms, though, how can businesses really approach this idea of productivity and efficiency and getting the most out of that room?
Yeah, right. Absolutely critical. Talk to your colleagues first. People don't go into a room to have a meeting, they go into a room to do work. So understand what type of work they are trying to complete in that space. Do they need to have whiteboarding facilities? Are they just going to sit and share an Excel spreadsheet and have that displayed on the screen? Are they just going to do PowerPoint presentations? Understand what your users are trying to achieve in these meetings and then design according to the user. You absolutely have to get that right or your rooms won't get used. And if your rooms don't get used, there's a huge cost that you have just wasted, and you have frustrated users who can't complete the tasks that they're assigned. So it's really, really important to understand what they're trying to achieve.
So Simon, we're getting towards the end of the conversation today, but I want to sort of leave our viewers with a forward-looking statement and what you're kind of thinking about that's coming down the line. How do you see this MTR space evolving over the next kind of 12 to 18 months? What kind of trends should our viewers be looking out for? What's top of mind for you?
This is a very exciting time to be in the meeting room business. We are really seeing a huge explosion in multi-camera, and to call out one vendor at the moment who are really doing very well would be Logitech with their Sight, the center of room camera. That paired with the Rally at the front of room gives an absolutely fantastic experience, which enables remote users to really understand and read what's going on inside the room. We've got this coming from several other vendors, and that's going to be huge. I cannot wait to get this deployed. It's really very, very good. Very exciting. Increased AI. I know AI is everywhere, and you'll hear the chant Copilot, Copilot, Copilot. But really the advances in AI, people detection, intent detection, object detection, this stuff is really, really moving forward at a pace, and I cannot wait to see it burst forward. There is so much to say about this, which we can't go into too much detail with because of NDAs. But these are two really key things that I'm really excited to see the development of over the next 12 to 18 months. Really good.
Great. Well, look, Simon, unfortunately, that is all we have time for. But thank you so much for coming along and sharing some of your insights. You gave some really good sort of list of points there for people to really think about when they're going about their Microsoft Teams room deployment. So that's really great. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, David.
And thank you for watching. You've been watching me, David Dungay, on UC Today. If you like today's conversation, please give us a like and a share on social media. That's it from me. See you next time.